Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Ad hoc Grant Search Committee for March 18th. And it is about 1:34, so we have most everybody present here. From the committee itself, we have Diana Fetterman and Kate Swistak. Hopefully Ed Gibson will join us shortly. And then our invited guests representing their different hats in town. Cindy Palmer representing the Planning Board, Ian Illingsworth, Chief of Police, John Workman, Fire Chief, and others may join as they have time. But anyway, we wanted to continue our discussion. Basically, as usual, let me just make a double check, but I don't see anybody hanging out there in the public wanting to join us. I think we're such an exciting committee. We don't have a public following yet, but you never know. Maybe that'll change. Anyway, so with no public comment, let's just move right into the business, which is our one-stop expressions of interest application template. Diana and Sierra have put together some thoughts. Everybody has had bits and pieces. I've tried to add in something, and I did get the. Let me just show you what I got. This thing from Ian was great to find this and forward us the electronic version of this public safety complex report that had been done back in 2015, and I think this was something that had been done and presented to. Sorry, hang on a minute. Presented at town meeting way back when, and it had all sorts of photos and. Goes way back, talking about some of the various issues with the current police and fire stations. I'm just going to skim it a little bit here. But there had been a fair amount of work done on this. I asked Ed, and I don't think it was, he found it yet. It was the last minute ask I had just to find out what we might have paid for this study that was done in 14 and 15. There were like 3 or 4 different options that they came up with at the time. And so relocating, getting rid of the building, incorporating it, etc. It came out to be pretty detailed in terms of their cost estimates and their floor plan and how many people we need and what was the shared space between the fire and the police and site maps and the whole bit. So we've had a footprint done of what this could look like. Again, the problem I gather is that by the time it was all done, and I guess this is pretty much trying to restore, if I'm understanding this, this is trying to keep a bit of the historical facade, but then building out on either side of it, and then obviously having the garage level for the trucks and ambulances, etc., somewhat down below. Obviously, a lot of work went into putting this together, but the price was around $11 million. And so when it went to town meeting, it obviously, I guess there was quite a bit of discussion, but the price seemed to be pretty tough. The idea was to probably put it forward to a debt exclusion so that once the debt was paid off, then it would go away, and it would kind of substitute for some of the other debt that we had already incurred in town that was going off the rolls from Hampshire Regional or some of the others, so that it would be something that could be possibly manageable. But I gather it did not pass the town's residents' opinions, and so therefore it's basically sat, from what I can tell, for that long in terms of any kind of plan, in terms of further development of the plan, let's put it that way. I know there's been since then the committee that has worked on looking at other sites and trying to figure out what to do, and as we talked last week, I think kind of coming up empty-handed so far. So what I would like to do is go into what bits and pieces we've tried to fill in the blank on some of the draft here, and I sent it out just late just to have you have a copy, which you may not have had a chance to look at it yet, which is fine. But we can certainly entertain any comments you may have afterwards, if you want to just shoot me an email on things. But before we do that, let's see. So yes, okay, this is the right part. So this is the beginning. Let me find them where my scroll magnet is here. Okay, so, and thank you, Diana, for putting this together. Diana, I think this is not quite your last version. You said you made some changes after we chatted, so I don't think I
Yeah,
captured
I
that
tried to weave it in, like you said.
here.
So I
Okay,
put your graph. I kind of wove into the last
okay.
few sentences there. So
All right.
you
Well, I
should
think this must be the version before that, Diana. So that's
right.
okay for talking purposes. It's okay
Uh-huh.
for now. Okay, so the first part of the background, which is the applicant. So I'm assuming the applicant for any of our talks is going to be the town of Southampton. Um, and so what we've got in here is to answer this very first question about our primary economic development goals, assets, and opportunities. And so this amount of information, this first paragraph is something I threw in, which now I gather, Dinah, you've kind of woven in a little bit better.
Yes, I put it at the end and presented that as an opportunity, trying to answer the question.
Okay, moving it to the end rather than the front. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I kind
Yeah.
of transitioned.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's no problem.
And
So
I
I can.
took out smart because you questioned that, and I took out the farmer's market.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to dump it down here so we have a clearer idea just for now.
I mean, I could read to you what I wrote, but I don't know that we want to spend time doing that.
Well, have you guys had a chance to look at this, or would it be helpful just to sort of read it out loud, or what would you prefer to do? I'm open to anything. Just unmute yourselves.
I read it. I thought it looked great. I thought you did a great job.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think I wasn't sure about the smart growth strategy. To me, that's kind of the name of a program that towns get into, and I'm not positive that we're part of that. So I was just a little cautious about using that terminology without double checking on it. That's all. That was my only thought there.
Yeah.
I did like the part about the assets, the sort of describing the town, the dedicated volunteers, the educational system. We can certainly find out about what our healthy bond rating is. I'm sure we can get that easily enough. Priorities include this sort of tension of preserving our distinctive character and open space, our rural nature in a way, but also trying to increase the commercial base and improve infrastructure, and promoting recreational tourism, which would be partly with the Greenway for sure, and our various hiking trails and recreation things in town. I questioned the farmers market one only because that was in the master plan from 2013, but since that time there has been nothing going on to make that happen to my knowledge, and that of all things seems to be not a terribly complicated activity to put into place. So I guess I'm interpreting that as not a terribly strong interest to get it going as we might have thought 6 or 7 years ago. Not to say that it's still not wanted, but I don't know that I would feature it as a priority for the town in this particular thing. So that's all we were saying here. Okay. So feel free.
Can I interject?
Please.
Can I quickly interject regarding number one? In the first sentence, pursuing a smart growth strategy, I just looked up smart growth because you're right. It's kind of a philosophical approach to urban planning. And if you read the characteristics, and it's on a website called smartgrowthamerica.org, I would say we are definitely pursuing a smart growth strategy, mixed land uses, advantage of compact design, walkable neighborhoods, distinctive, attractive communities with a strong sense of place, preservation of open space, farmland, natural beauty. I think it's a great sentence. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then I'm wrong. We'll leave it in.
As long as we don't uppercase it, I think, even if there are official plans named that, if we don't capitalize it, probably safe enough.
I think that sounds like a plan. Okay. I'm fine with that idea. So anyway, that gets us a good sense. I think that does capture sort of what the town is all about. I wasn't finding any other place besides master plan or the open space and recreation plan to define any of our economic development goals. I don't know what other document they would be in. I haven't come across anything better than just the chapters in those two main documents. So we'll just kind of go through this briefly. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I want to get more into the guts of the concepts themselves, okay? Main challenges and obstacles to progress on this. I think this is very well stated. I really thought the tax revenue and not kept pace with the cost of services, development pressure on Southampton, the bedroom community idea again has come in here. So this, kind of sets the stage for both of our problems of affordable housing as well as lack of a good commercial base, partly because of the lack of a sewer system, public sewer system, etc. And then at first I wasn't sure about the obstacles to progress at the very end here. Diana, you had mentioned the town would benefit from paid staff, such as, which, actually, yes, that is an obstacle to our progress because we are all, no matter how dedicated, the volunteers aspect of things makes it much tougher to move forward in some cases when you don't have a dedicated person doing a dedicated task. So anybody have any comments?
Seems that way to me, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Anybody have any first thoughts on this? Is this, did you have a chance? Yes.
Can I ask a question, or am I jumping in too fast here?
No, go ahead.
So last night at the planning board meeting, I raised that this is a process that's ongoing with your committee. And one question that came up with was whether or not a grant could be acquired or awarded to hire a planner, or to hire, the question specifically was to hire a planner. My answer was I didn't think so, because I thought this was meant to be kind of a beginning and end kind of project that we would be looking to have funded, not ongoing. And we've run into circumstances in the past where we had grant funding for somebody, as specifically a conservation agent part-time, and there were issues with that from what I understand. So just to be clear, this grant couldn't hire a planner or a grant.
I don't believe so. From everything I've read, no, I don't think that's the intent of this. Okay. And you're right. From what little I've heard about the shared conservation agent that was with Easthampton, that ended up not being a good opportunity in the long term. And it might have been just how it was structured and expectations that were not clear to start with. But definitely, that has been tried anyway in the past.
Yeah, and can I just say, the reason I put that in was because I've sat in on so many webinars and seminars for conservation or for those types of interests. And the town's doing great jobs. Invariably, it turns out they have paid staff to do that, And we're kind of beating ourselves up because we haven't been able to do the same kind of things, but that's why, I think.
Yeah. And I don't know if some towns may have managed through some sort of grant or some other funding access to build in the cost of a planner in their grant, for example. Maybe that's, for a bigger
answer that question.
for a bigger program, maybe that's true. I don't know how they end up doing it, but it could be just larger communities too. That are having more resources. Yeah, I think many of them are probably more towns rather than, or mini cities rather than our size town, and have more of a tax base to look at it.
Yeah.
So did I hear, is there opportunity to perhaps write a grant for like a planner?
Not out of this one anyway. We'd have to do some research on that, John. I don't know. I know in some cases you can build in some administrative personnel into a grant award, and in some of the federal grants I've seen, for example, But again, it's only limited for the amount of the time of the grant. So it has no ongoing,
Yeah, staying power. Yeah,
right.
but even, yeah, but I guess my thought being, even if we had a snapshot that was current, with some ideas that if and when we did get a planner, we could work from,
Mm,
it would be helpful, especially for what we're trying to do, what you're trying to do with all the
yeah,
grants that we're writing and the
yeah,
direction of everything that's written here.
yeah. So it's something we can certainly research. It definitely does not apply in this particular grant though, but
Okay. All right.
could be
Yeah.
on another avenue. There might be something there, but okay. And then this third question here, um, the sort of the work and the projects that have been undertaken over the last 5 years. I
Yeah,
too thought
that
this
one,
good.
I'm
Yeah.
not an expert on that. I was just kind of trying to think of everything, that came to
Yep.
mind.
Sure.
So,
Yep. Well, the East Street Bridge is certainly there, and the ball fields and those kinds of things. The
We
open
do have some new
space.
sidewalks in town that were,
Yep.
I think, yeah.
We mentioned that in the beginning, up at the very top, first line. Yep. Um, so then, just talking about actively investigating building a new public safety complex, developing a stronger commercial tax base, and infrastructure improvements. Um,
mhm.
We've already done our improved water connection to Easthampton, I believe. And then obviously the Greenway trail work that we're working on. So all of that I think is true. There may be some others, and maybe Ed can chip in with a couple of other ideas on this as well. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. So this, keep in mind now, this is the backdrop to any of the concepts that we want to pitch, right? So this is kind of presenting Southampton's who we are and what our goals are and what our problems have been trying to move forward on things. So this all presents kind of that backdrop. So we have mentioned um, some of the housing. I think housing was mentioned up in here earlier, if I'm not mistaken, and then the public safety thing here and the lack of a commercial base. So the three of those are kind of in this backdrop part. That then there was only a couple more minimal things to answer in that section, and one of them doesn't even apply to us because it was a compact cities thing or whatever. So that would be all that there is, and then you jump into the actual project pitches that we would have. So first one, exploring the underutilized properties for affordable housing. So both Sierra and I had taken a little stab at this, and it really is just very, very rough. This is just first thoughts, put them down on paper before we forget them kind of thing. So don't worry about editing and whatever at this point. We're not even there. We want to make sure that we're hitting points that are relevant and convincing. So focusing on what we did through the community survey, through master plan, generally most people in town, the majority of the town is living in detached housing. Most of the respondents felt that they were pretty okay with where they're living, but there were a lot of comments in the report that talked about, well, I'm fine now, but when I have to downsize, I don't think I can stay in town, or I've lived here all my life, but I don't think my kids will be able to afford to stay in town, or those kinds of things. So that's kind of some of the issue, I guess, that we've heard anyway through town, trying to, sort of describe what the project initiative would be. So again, maybe this was intended to be kind of the backdrop to the housing problem, and then jumping into what the initiative would be, which would be to identify town-owned lots that are currently vacant and not utilized to their full capacity. So the idea of this one would be to really look at the potential for developing those things, those particular sites. So that would be some sort of site concept plans or market studies, with the idea specifically, I think in this one, for affordable housing. So Sierra had put these other couple things in here, public safety and commercial development, but I think this one should really just focus on housing. So my recommendation would be we just take out the reference here to public safety and commercial development, because those come in pitch number 2 and pitch number 3. So just trying to sort of talk more about the problem of affordable housing, and what it is we want to try and achieve, and then how that aligns with the overall goals that had been on the previous section. So affordable town, again, is just beginning to put some words on paper here, so there's a lot more to do. Okay. To expand affordable housing in town, and with limited resources. So not a whole lot of verbiage in here as yet.
You know what you're saying though, should we put somewhere about the community survey? Because like question 2.3 did say describe any major community projects. So
Okay.
that
Yep.
was a major thing. We should probably mention that somewhere.
Okay. I'll just put a
Not
note.
to Cindy.
I'll just put a note on here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Survey. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. Good point. So there's more to be done on articulating the housing thing. And Sierra said that she was under a deadline, but she was going to work on it this weekend. So I'm sure she's going to have more to say about this. But I just wanted to let you know. And Diana, one thing you had mentioned, I think in your earlier section on the background, you would put in this the notion about the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, the subdivisions.
Yeah, I moved it out of that background one and put it in here because I think it really
Okay.
is relevant to the housing issue.
All right. Yep.
That's where it sits at the moment.
You
So-
could run that past Cindy again, because
Yep.
she would know about that.
Yeah,
Which one am I supposed to know? Where?
the zoning bylaw on the 10 houses.
Oh.
Diana had it in the background, and I moved it out of there to put it in here, saying that we have a zoning bylaw that requires the 10 homes in a subdivision, the 10th home to be affordable. Yet so far, developers have limited themselves to 9
Yeah,
homes in a subdivision.
I could probably suggest a slightly different wording on that. We have a name
Yes,
for it. It's the inclusionary
absolutely.
bylaw. And
Yeah.
good.
That's the
I'll help
inclusionary.
put-
That's the inclusionary, right? Is that right?
It's the inclusionary bylaw, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
We'll
we'll
help.
get into all the wordsmithing. I just wanted
Sure.
to knock some, the major ideas down that we wanted to be sure that we were trying to do. And I don't remember how many, we talked about the property on Middle Road as one to definitely investigate. I'd have to go back and listen to our notes again or from our meeting, which other properties we talked about. Some of them I think were too small. The other town ones were over on Gilbert Road. We determined that was a wetland and that was not buildable. The one by the police station is a postage stamp size, maybe more garden size than housing size, etc. So we'd have to double check which ones we talked about now in terms of how many of these. I don't know whether we would list them in here because again, this is where we're limited to that 1,000 characters, not words, but 1,000 characters. So, all of this has got to be edited to make it fit. So I don't know that we'd actually put the parcels in this thing at all. It's really just throwing out a concept. They don't need to have the detail of where they are because I think people in Boston, it wouldn't make any difference to them anyway. It wouldn't make any sense to them to know where they are or what they are, but we need to know ourselves. So basically, we've got to do more about how this aligns with our overall goals for the town, and then how ready we are. So at this point, we know that we've got town-owned vacant properties, and we would need to, secure through this grant some kind of contractors to do some basic assessments of the property, do a site plan, and figure out, is the place on Middle Road, for example, is that room for one house? Is it 2 houses? Could it be a duplex? What's possible? So I think that's kind of where we would be going with that idea at this point. So let me jump further into would I like to add a second project? Yes, I would. And so the second project would be the public safety complex site feasibility. So thank you, Ian, for passing me that information, because I was able to pull some stuff from it and try to write something about the public safety complex issue here. But before we jump into that, did you and John, did you have a chance to go talk to the Marmon Keystone people at all, or not yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. I think from, everything we were really talking about last time, to me, the two real central properties are potentially that, depending on whatever their plans are for that property that is now used as a cornfield right next to them, as well as, I guess, the part up in back that leads to the back access of the 20 or so acres in the back part off of College Highway that Ryan Gallagher bought not long ago, what his plans may be for that. I had only heard at one point in time that there might be somebody interested in doing basically a greenhouse, I think, set up for marijuana cultivation, but they have not returned back around. But that doesn't mean that that's not an idea. But it might be something to think about too, in terms of whether that's a possible site. We don't know without talking to Ryan what his plans might be for that property.
Yeah, I know that there's some contamination up in that area as well, just from some of the, there's wells by the fuel station there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how that would affect that property, but my guess is it would be impacted in some way.
Yep. Yep. Good point. Yep. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. Any of these kinds of things, they'd have all sorts of kind of, hazardous material studies and whatever that would have to go through them to do any kind of a site feasibility plan, I'm sure. And then the other option is basically where we are right now with the land behind the fire station. So I guess, I was trying to go back and listen hard to what, John, you were saying last meeting. A couple of ideas about, trying to preserve the facade of the historical building, but a lot of it is not original by any means. And so trying to think about that, trying to think about somehow moving the fire station farther up the hill a little bit. I looked at the tax maps, and it doesn't look to me like we own all the way up to High Street. I'm pretty sure we don't.
No, we don't.
Yeah, so we do have some acres there that look like it would be pretty good size, but it would be maybe reorienting, the drawings and stuff that had been done in the previous study that I was just, referring to.
Yeah, I believe that one spot that was a potential viable would be as where the driveway exits now,
Yeah.
Just up to the right of that. There might be a small section, because it wouldn't be a large building. It would be just it wouldn't be the whole of the fire station, it'd just be the main structure. And
Yeah.
and like you're saying, you'd probably only save like maybe the top half of the facade and rebuild almost
Yeah.
everything else.
Well, and even, honestly, whether the facade stays there or I don't know. I mean, honestly, there could be some other creative thoughts too. I mean, you think about
Sure.
I know it was a move, but we moved that little old schoolhouse to Conant Park.
Oh,
mean,
yeah. No,
I mean, I don't know, maybe maybe there's some other creative way to deal with that structure, but we'd obviously have to get historical involved in that too.
Yep.
And I do believe, though, I know it's kind of wet there, that Potash Brook to the right, but we do own that land too, to the right of the fire station, I believe, right?
Yeah, we do, but it has been delineated by wetlands and did
Yeah.
go through conservation. And
Okay.
I believe there has been perspective, because that was done with what you had just looked at previously, what Ian had
Yeah.
passed along.
Yeah.
They really had to consider how close they could get to that brook
Right.
and those wetlands.
Yeah. So I don't know whether the idea would be to try and have some other feasibilities of sorts, site survey, I don't know what we'd call it exactly, done, looking at, say, both of those properties, assuming something around the Keystone area could be possible to look at, as well as this. Again, just because of that central location, they both seem to be, the the best in terms of that part. I think, you know, again, because we own this property, it just seems like there ought to be something we can figure out more creatively to do with it. And it may involve a redesign. Now, I wanted to get a note as to what we might have spent on that study, because I am leery of obviously putting more money in to do the same thing. That's not the intent.
Yeah, I
But
want to say we spent probably, I don't know, it was like $30,000 is what comes to mind.
for the study, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay. Probably in that neighborhood, I wouldn't be surprised. So, you know, just trying to see whether that would be an idea to try and say, okay, this idea, this design, this footprint, whatever, this cost, mind you, again, already nearly 6 years ago now, didn't fly with the town, but we really do believe that this is a viable site for us. What else can we do to make it work? So I guess that's kind of my thinking along that line. But I'm willing to be talked down to that. But what I did based on the information that I got from Ian, I tried to put a little narrative together. There's probably far too many dates in here. But it was just trying to talk about the fact that we've got these old structures that have had very minimal renovation over time. They're not secure, they're not safe, they're not adequate in terms of any kind of health standards for any of the people working in there. But that, you know, that they were still probably the better locations. And so the two central locations I was referring to without citing it was the Marmon Keystone is the other one I'm referring to here. But others have not been identified that, you know, meet the desired response times for emergency services. So that's kind of where I was thinking along those lines. And then critical for the town, small but growing town, fire trucks barely fit in the station, no room for personnel movement, let alone gear storage. And neither one, I believe, sort of comply with whatever codes we have or normal standards. And I would think that they would create some level of liability for the town.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the cancer is one of the biggest things in the fire service right now. And there's no way to get that and the carcinogens from the trucks running, all the gears there.
Yeah.
And that's also where they're getting into the gear.
Sure.
There's no, you know, we may honestly, it's the building is such that you almost hate to bring anybody in just because potentially it could be shut down just by some of the new like OSHA standards, the state OSHA
Yeah.
stuff. And it's tricky because how much money do you put into the building? And it's really, you know, but how long can we skirt without it? So there is, it does give it some imperativeness. And I would, you know, if you're going to mention just for, you know, getting it across, I mean, it really is a cancer issue now.
Yeah. I'll just put a little note here for myself. Well, and OSHA probably, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would help. I haven't sat down to count, and I imagine you guys know off the top of your head. I think it might help to have some basic details in terms of our police force. You know, the number of people that we have on our police force, the number of our on-call fire folks, etc. If we could just get some basic numbers to probably throw in somewhere here, if it's relevant.
45 from FD.
Okay. And these would be 45 on call. Is that what we say?
Yeah. That's our roster.
Okay. Firefighter and EMT, or?
Yeah, combination of, so it's firefighter, EMTs, paramedics, and some which are cross-trained to all, you know, all of the above.
Right. Okay. And how about you, Ian? You got a number for me offhand?
10 full-time and 10, usually it's 10 part-time officers and 4 full-time dispatchers and 4 part-time dispatchers.
So 4 full-time and 4 part-time?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so in case we need that for somewhere that fits better. So anyway, that's kind of some of the thinking around that. So the idea would be to, in terms of what has been done to, or how ready we would be. And I don't remember how many acres that is. Does anybody know how many acres that is? I didn't look that up actually. That was
I'm
acquired.
looking at the assessor's map now. Which are you talking about? The
land behind the fire station. So it's maybe map 23, but I don't
Yeah.
know the parcel.
Okay, so it's listed total at 7.5 acres. That's map 23, parcel 24.
But that's including the current town hall, no?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is. It's
for-
all pulled together. Yep.
For the public safety complex, we probably need like 3 acres if you're looking
Okay.
for a number there.
Okay. Oops. Come on. And that would include police and fire, yeah?
Correct. Public safety complex.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's hard from the map, the assessor's map, Cindy, to tell what was the parcel that we bought, how much that was. But we can go back in records and find that at some point. Because I think that 7.5 acres includes everything, the current fire station, but also the town hall when I looked at it briefly.
That is true. Yep.
Okay, so we can come up with those fill in the blank figures there. So what I did in here was just mention that we had acquired the land, site development analysis, preliminary design concept and costing for the public safety complex, as well as public meetings occurred. And this was in that slide deck I showed you. But the proposed cost was prohibitive and project was rejected by the voters, but it remains the best option already on unutilized town property. And the project would be to redesign the site to adequately meet our needs. So both Ian and John, this is really your bailiwick here. So I don't want to put words in your mouth. Am I trying to make something that's impossible by re-examining that site, or is that worthwhile to do?
And I'm sorry, I'm multitasking a bit and I apologize.
No problem.
So you're wondering whether it's worthwhile to relook at the site that has already been looked at where we currently sit,
Yes.
where the fire department sits? Possible. I mean, I think just for them to take it as extensively as they did for what Ian had passed along, there was a fair amount of, site work and some well bore holes that have been done and some things like that. We could certainly do it again, but I'm not sure what the gain would be unless we had. I mean, I don't think you'd find anything that would save us a bunch of money. I think some of the challenges to the site initially were that it was, leaving the station intact in the time that it took to build another station, and then as you started to take it down, and also getting a roadway out that was separate from the town hall traffic, which can be problematic at times. And so there was a fair amount of costs on that. And then, of course, because we are on a grade variant, they did have, the apparatus bay was lower than the administrative area.
Right.
And so you get into different costs and some blasting costs, which are, all can be fairly typical of a building site, but would certainly interplay with what we've got here. So I think you're going to, they'd already looked for ledge, they'd already looked for, the septic, they'd already considered the wetlands, and they're also considered working around the structures that are here now. I don't know what more there would be to discover, and I'm not against it or anything. I just don't know what more would there be to
No,
find out.
yeah, and I don't either. And I guess I'm wondering not to redo what they've done, because I mean, it looks like I was checking on these guys that did the study, and apparently they look like they're the same ones that did the one in Westhampton just a couple years ago.
Yeah, I could actually go back because they had come forward. We actually had to pick from a number of people
Mm,
to who would actually do the proposal.
okay,
Um,
but these guys are on the same. I looked at the Westhampton plan that they had done in 2018, and it's the same firm that did theirs.
Yep.
But they're actually going to be renovating their current station and adding to it. Whereas Williamsburg is knocking down their old school and putting up a new structure. So
yeah,
everybody's
It's hard-
doing it a little differently.
yeah, it's hard to work with an old structure, unfortunately, just because of the requirements of
Right.
I think it's a class 1 building or something.
Yeah. So I think that my thought here, just John, and I'll turn it over to Ian in a sec. My thought would be not to redo per se what has been done, but to use that as a jumping off point to say, okay, this was the thinking, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and this is how the design was looking. But, what if, the fire station wasn't there? What if it was moved somewhere? How can we reimagine that site? Is there anything different, in terms of how things would be laid out that would make it more doable, more feasible for us? Would we have to have access on High Street somehow? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't have to, but it'd be nice.
Yeah. So, I definitely would be mindful of, throwing good money after bad kind of thing. That whole scenario. Not that it was bad money, but I mean, you don't want to repeat what you've already done. But can
Yeah.
it be a possibility to be a jumping stone to say, okay, well, we got this far, but now, a few years later, is there anything new that's come about in terms of thinking about design for these complexes that might help us? I don't know.
Yeah, and probably the biggest question would be whether they would have to, redig, redelineate, those kind of things, because that's where the costs come in.
Yeah. Ian, any thoughts in particular? Or
If I remember correctly, I think one of a large hurdle we had to try to overcome was the historic value of the firehouse.
okay.
Am I right in saying that, John? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was, I mean, I was a big advocate, have been, for historic. I think it's a character of the town. I've sat in some historic committees and stuff. And I reaching out to Don Warren. I mean, when I sat down with him, he was very amicable to really, if we could, save some of the character, even if we were only saving a small piece of facade and moving it up a hill to a little piece. I think they just want to be recognized for the historic value
Sure.
of the town.
Yeah.
So I think there's avenues to work with historic is the bottom line.
I think it created some.
It did, because they weren't included.
No, I think it created some expenses.
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Because you're moving, to move the building in its entirety is almost tremendously cost prohibitive, not worth it. I think there needs to be some concession of how much. And if you really just took a small piece and then rebuilt, so you could really it would add the benefit right by town hall to have another meeting area that the town could utilize for some of the civic groups, and preserve historic character.
And by leaving the firehouse there, the school, it would have been the schoolhouse. That's what would have been preserved as.
Correct. That would have been the original structure. Yep.
Then it would have created issues with the driveway going into the wetlands and the environmental hurdles with that and the expenses with that.
Yeah. There is that. Always an issue. That was one of you're right. That was one of the big issues, because where do you get it and how much work, and the fact that already we're driving over a brook that basically goes from, the top side of the property down through, and, occasionally washes out if at DPW throw riprap in to keep the parking lot from washing away. And already our drain that's in the center of the parking lot, you probably noticed a barrel on it because it's starting to wash out from underneath.
Yeah.
So there's challenges to the site as we know it now. And certainly if we were going to be doing major reconstruction, there's some costs associated.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got some more thinking to do around that a little bit, but if you have any other ideas, please just shoot me an email. we don't have to wait. We've only got probably one more meeting we can even do before we have to submit this. So I really need to have everybody put on your thinking caps this week if there's something that you can do. And if John, you and Ian could manage to check in with the Keystone folks this week, that would be really appreciated, because I think
Yeah,
we
we're
kinda
just,
need to know.
yeah, we were just texting prior. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Okay, so whether that's, even an option, I mean, it may not be whatsoever. The other one that somebody brought up to me while I'm thinking of it, you folks know it's right at the corner on the College Highway side of Conant Park, but it's across from Clark Chapman, that metal building that has been a storage for party patrols.
Yeah.
Anybody know what's going on in that building? Is there anything happening there?
I think a business is out of there. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure a business is out of there.
Okay.
The Rices own it. The people who
Rices
live
do?
right
Oh,
next
really?
door.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, no, I was just wondering if that building was anything in particular. I've not ever really understood what goes on there, so, okay. Huh.
I think the businesses rotate. Different
Yeah.
ones have been in and out of there.
Yeah, because there's one, just right on College Highway that, I don't know how much land there is there, whether that was another possibility too. I don't know.
Diana, did you say the Rices owned that building? It's like corrugated metal kind of building?
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So just guessing, I wouldn't think they'd want to sell it in
yeah.
order to have a big public safety complex.
No,
built
no,
there.
that's fine. I was just looking at somebody, I was
Yeah.
looking at buildings as I was driving around the other day too, and it was just like, what? And so, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. No, so I think we really have the, the two, and I think that side of Clark Street and where we are currently, for lack of anything else at the moment. Okay, let's jump on to the third idea that Cindy, you and I had talked about briefly, which was, I'm just making a name. I just called it increasing commercial opportunities. And all I did was put in a sentence about determine feasibility of further developing the town's limited commercial space at the north end of town, making use of vacant stores, and taking advantage of existing public water and sewer. But that's as far as I got. So do you want to talk about a little bit your idea? Because that was more oral than it has been in writing between us. So feel free to tell us what you're thinking about, and maybe if anything came up at planning board last night that might help us out with this idea, or
well, in answer to your second question is no, I did present this at the planning board last night, but I pretty much caught everybody off guard. So nobody had anything to say particular. But what my idea was, and I developed this idea in part because of looking at, for example, the master plan update that we're working on now, and to some extent the open space and recreation plan, and the fact that the planning board is listed as primary in a number of spots.
True.
And that secondly, we are always wondering how to maximize our commercial districts. And also the concept of mixed use, which you don't happen to have on there, but I think we should insert that. Could there be, but the potential for not just strict, oh, you got it right there. Sorry about that.
That's all.
And allow that, and to explore, this would where a professional planner would be so valuable, but to explore what could be done and build upon what you just said, the fact that we're close to the Easthampton line. We are close to the infrastructure that I think Big Y put their own septic system in there, and how to really enhance that entire area, both sides of Route 10. And also, as you all know, because you've driven down Route 10 about a zillion times, we've got for sale signs in commercially zoned areas. What I'm told is they're a very big challenge to develop because of so close to wetlands. And so to me, somebody with a very educated, approach and experts to look at, to what extent can we see development of some of these areas?
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just curious, what about the south end of town with the you know, where the Labrie zone, it's a large industrial area. I think it's zone industrial, correct? Is
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
something that we would consider perhaps sewer
it,
extension?
it could be considered. I've heard people state that it's not necessarily very attractive to developers because if you get it's so close to the Westfield line, and once you get into Westfield, you know, there is opportunity for people to put in industrial kind of development and benefit from the Westfield infrastructure. And the closer you go south on Route 10, the closer you get to Route 90. So consequently, you know, it's not to say impossible to develop up there on what is currently industrially zoned, but it isn't as attractive because we don't have the in-town infrastructure for the development.
Which
Yeah,
would be,
but that's for commercial business, and if they're talking about a public safety complex, it's
Oh,
not
I'm
an
sorry.
issue.
I'm not talking public safety. I thought we moved on. I thought we were talking about developing commercial opportunities.
Yeah, no, Ian, what were you referring to? Go ahead.
I was referring to the, you know, the infrastructure, you know, for development of the south end of town where the, for sewer capabilities possibly. So maybe it would be more attractive for commercial properties to
Mm.
Mhm,
move in.
I know some of the challenges are also in water supply there.
mhm. Yeah, and that's where I unfortunately have not been able to grab a hold of Tom Gahn to get him to join in on us, because I think, you know, one of the ideas could be to see whether, I think we mentioned it early on, that there had been some talk about connecting in with Westfield, especially from, you know, the ponds area, from, you know, both water lines and other things. And that was years ago, and whether Westfield is at capacity now for their situation, that they may not even have anything that they'd want to give us. We don't know that, I
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, if that fit into the grant parameters, that would certainly be a good one, because that's, you know, doing stuff for, you know, the ecology of the pond and for potential business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris, I have to leave. There's another meeting that was at 1:30, the bylaw
Sure.
meeting I should probably try to hit if they're not done. So I'm gonna.
Okay, thanks, Ian.
I'm gonna take off.
All
here.
right, I appreciate it. Thanks much.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye. Yep, we're gonna end up here probably pretty soon. Yeah, I don't know. Right now, remind me, the south end is zoned industrial, right? Not commercial? Or is that wrong?
Correct.
It's
That's
zoned
correct.
industrial on Route 10.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
okay. Well, anyway, well, I guess the thinking on the north end was just because we are so tied into Easthampton, we've already got that, I'll call it a strip mall for lack of anything better. The Red Rock shops are there. We've got the empty Peoples there. Somebody's moving into the Harley Davidson, but I mean, it's just sort of like, that seems to be where there's a little hub of activity that could be further exploited maybe. And I guess I don't know if all the places up at the old trading post right across from the church now, the old Opa Opa there, that's a mixed use, right, Cindy, where there's apartments up above and down below is commercial, but I don't know that all of those commercial spaces are even taken.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that. I
Yeah.
think some appear to be vacant, like the insurance agency, but that's just me driving by. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So anyway, so that's, I guess that was the thinking, was more that just because that seems to be kind of an obvious hub of activity that maybe could have another look on it. I mean, you
Yes.
know, I don't know whether on top of some of the areas of the Red Rock shops, could there be apartments built up there? I don't know. Who knows?
Right. I
But
think in terms of the project initiative, that is essentially what we're talking about. How can we expand, enhance with our currently zoned commercial properties?
yeah,
How can we benefit from somebody else looking at all of this and looking at potentials for
right.
that?
So this would be much more of a, you know, sort of an overall feasibility study of sorts. I mean, it would be that kind of area, I think, is what we would be, you know, just looking at what's possible. So it's a little bit of planning and zoning is the category I thought it fit into, because it might, you know, affect some of the zoning issues that we have, or ones that we might need to put into place, bylaws we might need to put into place to make anything happen. So Kate, you've been very quiet. You have any thoughts? I know you've been busy on other things.
I'm sorry. I don't even know what to say. So I'm happy to also, I like finding supporting details. So I was thinking that if we do end up pursuing this as an initiative, we could look at our, either the planning, like our town plan, or, I don't know, just to provide some additional supporting, I don't know, statistics or documentation to kind of tie it into our existing town plans.
Yeah, well, that's that's part of our challenge, I think, is the only town plan per se that I'm aware of, and that's what we're kind of working out of, is the chapters from the master plan, which talk about economic development. And what else was I looking at? Economic development, I think, in particular, and housing were the two chapters that we were pulling from to get some basic information. So that needs to be probably exploited more. And like I say, I know on the housing part, Sierra said that she was going to dive in more on the weekend, but maybe, you and she could work a little bit more on the housing part if you'd like to. That would be great.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to do that.
That would be great. I'm a little stymied. I'm not sure where we want to go with this, the whole public safety one, but guess we need to do a little more thinking and see if there's, any other creative ideas here. And then the commercial opportunity one, we just need to flesh that out more in terms of the thinking about what that's about. But in terms of real core documents to go to from our town, I can't think of too much except for that one and the open space plan maybe, but there's probably other statistics. I think we found some others at one point about, businesses in town. In fact, there is something that we can get from the Mass Department of Employment and Training in terms of the number of businesses in town. I think it's in the master plan, it was like 124, oddly enough, that were like home-based businesses, or the industry that was the biggest sector, I guess, in Southampton was construction related, but also a lot of people were employed in the retail sector. So, we could probably update that a little bit, but where does it fit, kind of thing. So
I also think it helps to maybe I'll try to see if there's any like language about how businesses with like a specific any specific statistics about how tax revenue will also help to support town growth and development too.
It might. Our issue here is that we have one tax rate, whether you're a business or you're a homeowner. There's no differentiated tax rate, so it's all the same. But yes, I mean, more.
But still, businesses are, extra businesses are still businesses.
Sure, exactly. It's bringing in different levels of interest and people to town, et cetera, rather than having something that's not on the tax rolls. Absolutely. Yep. So yeah, okay. So I think that's kind of where we are. I feel like we've made headway. I'm just not quite sure how we pull it all together in the next couple weeks, but that is the goal. This has to be in by April 1st, I believe. So at most we would have one more meeting to try and brainstorm something else, which I would kind of like to do and just see, get the latest edits up to date. And anybody that has information, I took this out of Google Docs because I had been adding some things and changing things. So we'll get the more correct version back into Google Docs so that anybody can go in there, and I'll send the link again just so that anybody can go in and take a look at it and make comments, edit in the margins if you want to. So Diana, you and I probably just need to get on the right page with the right version now that I didn't take
yeah.
version,
Yeah.
but that's all.
You send it to me. I noticed a lot of typos in
Yep.
section 3, so we can work on that.
Sure. Okay. No problem.
I'm sure under the gun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So with that in mind, I think we'll just kind of call it quits today. We've had a good hour of sort of looking at this idea anyway. I'd rather not go into, we don't really have any particular new business that's urgent at the moment. And we can also just forego our minutes of our last meeting for another time when we've got 10 minutes extra to just focus on that. We do have our recordings up on the town website, so the public meetings are out there for the last 2 meetings, and we'll catch up with the written minutes next time around, hopefully. So with that in mind, does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up? If not, could we set a date for our next meeting?
When is this due?
It's got to be in by the 1st, and I've got to take a look at their webinar again because the the online form is a little bit crazy. It's not something I've done before, so I need to go through their webinar again and see how it reacts. But I think if like for the Mass Trails one, if you remembered, we were able to start entering stuff in, and you could save it as you went, and you didn't lose it. And I'm hoping this is the same one. So to the extent we can get a paragraph or 2 in, then we're in the system. That makes me feel more comfortable about using the system. It's a WebEx system. It's a little bit different than some of the other ones I've seen. So I just have to learn how to play with it. I sat in the webinar, but that was a month ago, so I don't remember all the details of how to access certain screens, etc. But a week from today would be the 25th. There is an open space conference though at 2 o'clock, guys. I know a couple of you might be interested in that. So
There's one today at 2 o'clock.
oh, was there? Okay, that figures. Sorry, I can't win.
It's okay. We can watch them.
Yeah, they're all
at our
recorded.
leisure.
Are they all recorded?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Well, should we try just a week from today, same time, same place, and see how far we could go?
Sure.
That would be the 25th, I guess. Okay.
I'm assuming you still want me to join you. Is that your thought?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd really like you to, kind of help us articulate number 3 here, initiative 3.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's where you've got a better sense of what's doable from what you know on the planning side and maybe some of the zoning side issues. That if we can articulate that a little bit better. And again, these are just meant to be, concepts, and we don't have to have all the details flushed out, but we need it clear enough they understand what the problem is we're trying to solve, I think, and what we're trying to ask them for help on, because the whole purpose of this is to get their feedback to say, well, if you're going to put in an application for initiative 3, for example, you need to supply X, Y, and Z. Okay, that's the kind of level of detail that they should provide us. So, we don't have to have every statistic right now, but we need enough to understand what we're talking about.
Okay.
To be sure of why we're thinking that this is an important project and how it relates to the overall town goals in terms of our economic development, I guess I would say. Okay.
Is this going to go into a Google Doc, or are we going to just put in comments and then you can copy paste them, or?
No, I'll put it back in a Google Doc. I had it in a Google Doc, but I pulled it out because I just thought it would be easier to work in here for today. But we'll put this back into Google, and I'll send a new link around. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. That'll be easier. Then we can all go in and edit whenever we've got time and do whatever comments you've got. So that would be fine. Okay. Good. Well, other than that, I appreciate everybody's attending and your brain power. And it's not an easy one to kind of toss around here, but I think we're making progress. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
We'll get back together in a week. All right.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye,
Take care,
everybody.
all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.